Hey everyone! Thanks. Love it. Awesome. Hello and welcome to Game Workers Australia Group Up, our first ever event at Melbourne National Games Week. Give it up for yourselves for coming and for coming together to make a difference in this industry, which is so desperately in need of better structures and practices and the sort of changes we're all trying to put in place. So thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, we started in Melbourne in 2018 and it has been 4 years of grassroots activism. And as of May this year, we partnered with Professionals Australia and now we have the legal backing of a national trade union. And it's really cool that you're all here. This Games Week has been really packed. We've had talks at High Score, at GCAP. We're going to be all over PAX. We've got this, which you're all here for. So just a massive thanks. There's a couple of presentations. We are going to have an Welcome to Country from Orangery Man Daniel Ross. We are going to have a little presentation from PA, which will be cool. We're going to have the amazing Sarah Pavlich also talk about their experience becoming the first workplace delegate for Game Workers Australia. So it's
for Australia's games industry.
Australia games industry.
And then we'll have a bit of a panel and keeping it light and not too formal, and then we'll head outside and have a good time. And that'll be the night. A quick reminder about your game. Do not forget about the game. We have 4 chances to play the game. And if we don't all win, we all lose. That's how unionism works. So I am very happy to share with you all that I am on the Librarians Association. If anyone would like, has a question about Librarians Association, please come and speak to me. Technically violating the rules a bit there, but it's also in the spirit of unionism. So sorry, Georgia. But we all have to work together. So talk to each other, find out what the rules are, and then when the bell rings, we all play and we'll see how we did.
Yeah, I think my team needs to elect a delegate for some shouting duties, so we will all have to get together as well.
All right.
But please welcome Orangery Man Daniel Ross to give us a generous welcome.
Thank you. Hello everyone. My name is Daniel Ross and I'm a proud Wurundjeri man. I'd like to start tonight by acknowledging my ancestors, my elders. I'd like to also extend my respects to everybody here today and acknowledge your elders past and present. Home, Naarm, the traditional lands of my ancestors. What a humbling place to be so close to the Birrarung, the Yarra River, a river of mist. We've got our sacred ceremony ground not too far down the road. They call that the MCG, I think, these days. They destroyed it and built a cricket pitch, a couple of stands. But it shows what the first settlers saw and they wanted to keep. It was good enough for them, we want it. From there, we were forced off, from home, we were forced off to places like Bowenball and Billabong, near Bulleen. The story kind of repeated. The squatters said, these fellas are getting fat. So they forced us off again. They established the mission at Corrandirk near Hillsville. At Corrandirk, we had people like Simon Wonga, William Barak. Some of their achievements kind of align a lot with the union movement. Simon Wonga was instrumental in the first treaty negotiated in Australia. 12 axes, a few blankets and a couple of bags of rice. The Crown ripped it up and said, we're not giving them that. Too much. 2022, what are we talking about now? I don't think they're going to get away with 12 axes. From there, we've seen people like William Barak advocated for our people. Advocated. What would you have to advocate for? On the mission, we couldn't get a paycheck until we learnt to read and write English. We weren't allowed to speak our native tongue. My grandmother was one of them. My great-grandmother was one of them. Her tribal name was Bullum, white butterfly. Gentle, caring. Little did they know when she received her tribal name that she'd be one of the first people to start an Aboriginal health service right here in Gertrude Street. to my pop, who's a senior elder now. You're looking at me, how old's this guy? I turned 21 last week, by the way. Not really, double it. It's good moisturiser. It's Melbourne. We don't get that too many hot days these days. But that's some of my journey, some of my story. And I can touch on when I started school. I went to school proud, little Aboriginal boy. Except I had everyone tell me I wasn't Aboriginal because I was white. And I got upset and I cried. I went home as my family lied to me. Who am I? Lost, confused. And my pop pulled me aside and he told me, you were born in the daytime and your cousins were born at night. And it just shows the change. We move forward another 30 years and my children start school. Wow, this is interesting. I wonder what their questions are going to be. Now they're a math equation like their algebra. What's their percentage? So it's good to see these changes. It seems to be like a 30-year cycle. 30 years before I started school, it was probably just a little bit less than that, but 1967 we had a referendum which saw Aboriginal people become human. Before that we fell under the Flora and Fauna Act. Strange thinking that my ancestors could have been all kept as pets, really, like a cockatoo or a galah in a cage. Our traditional lands go west to the Werribee River, north to the Great Divide, east to Mount Borbor, and south to Mordialloc Creek. We still practice culture today. We still hold ceremony, only the other day on the Birra Run, to address the sorrow business that we've been going through, and it goes in with our season, Poor Neat, when the wattle blooms. It's a time that we pause and look after our elders, because it's when they tend to pass. But it also means that it's a new beginning. We start to get tadpoles, our yams start to flower, so food sources are becoming prevalent. Changing the seasons. We don't have 4 seasons, we've got 6. We still stop and listen. I guess that's one of the keys from one of our Dreamtime stories from Bunjil. Bunjil being our creator, the wedge-tailed eagle. And if we stop and listen, not to the Dreamtime stories, but just listen, we learn to care for country, and then the country cares for us. And that's the essence of how we connect to where we are. But caring for country just isn't how we care for the land, but how we care for one another. What's unionism again? How we organise. I could talk about unionism all day. I'm a member of 2 unions. Gets expensive. But no, I'm an electrician by trade, because I figured when I went to school and all of my friends went to university, they needed power. I don't do that anymore. And I'm a CFMEU member. So I understand the challenges of organising. So did our people, hence those stories of organising to get paid and advocate. So embrace it. It's not always an easy battle, but one that's worth organising and assembling for. Wominjeka Wurundjeri Wurrung, Yemen Gundibik. Welcome to the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. Thank you.
Thank you to Wurundjeri man Daniel Ross for that outstanding welcome to country. My name's Mitch McCausland, pronounce he, him. I'm also another member of Game Workers Australia. And yes, I will be introducing our next speaker. I'll keep this brief. I just found out last night I'll be speaking. Yeah. All right. I'm honoured to welcome to the stage our first ever union delegate in the Australian games industry. Well, give it up for Sarah Pavlovic.
I think about a week or 2 ago that I was going to speak at this, like do an actual speech other than a panel. So my notes are on my phone from the tram ride this morning. So you'll have to excuse me if I look at my phone a bunch while I do this. But my pronouns are they, them. I'm a QA analyst by trade. That's what I like to get paid to do. But I this one. But I was also elected union delegate at my workplace. It basically, so a bit of background about me. Obviously, I work in QA. I've definitely been super inspired by the QA movement in America and the fact that a lot of those groups are unionizing, which is super awesome because they have been greatly mistreated by many companies. Fortunately, I haven't had nearly as bad of experience as they have, which is awesome. Doesn't mean I've had a perfect experience, of course. I mean, otherwise I probably wouldn't be here as a union delegate talking to you if I had an amazing experience. So I have a very left-wing family. I have a very pro-union family. My uncle, who I'm very close with, worked for the CMFU for about a year, I think, as their media comms manager, and kind of inspired me as well to really look into the union movement. So I worked in retail for a while, joined my union. Nothing much happened there, but I was always looking out for my colleagues and advocating for them when I need to and when I could, which meant a lot to me. I definitely cried a lot doing that and got very angry and emotional because I didn't necessarily have a great outlet for dealing with that. So that's me. We also have a really strong union history in Australia. They actually are really, really important to where we are at now. And the reason we have such amazing work conditions to begin with is because of all those unions in the past that did all the work to get us here today. For our generation, I feel like the union movement isn't as strong as it once was. But I feel like that's going to change and is changing. I think after COVID, people have learnt that they can get more from their workplace. They can get better benefits, more flexibility, so many more people working remote and being able to stay home with their kids and stuff like that. So I think now is a great time to join your union and to get involved and to look at organising and to see how you can make your workplace better. So the reason I joined the union specifically is because I had concerns about my pay rate and my contract and a few other details. So I went from a 12-month contract to a permanent contract, and the offer was below the award rate. So we have an award rate that covers all games workers. The union will probably tell you more about that later specifically, but my pay didn't align with what I was expecting. So I challenged them on that. I was like, hey, this is below the award rate. Here's what I think it should be. Can we look into that? And they said they'd get back to me. They also told me not to tell anybody else who was going through the same process as me at the time. Obviously, I'd tell everybody I could because that's what you're supposed to do. So, unfortunately, that was a very tight time frame, and I had to end up agreeing to the contract even though I wasn't happy with it because I still wanted a job. I still wanted to work for them, and I thought, you know what, let's agree to it now, and in the future I can fix this. It's not forever. They did agree to review it in 6 months' time. Which I was super, pretty happy about. I was like, okay, things are still manageable. This is still enough money for me to live and be happy where I was. Now, like I said, there were quite a few other people facing the same issue, and we started talking a lot about things, and a few of them joined the union, and I started talking to more and more people at my workplace about the union. I started attending the union meetings that happen every month, which anybody is welcome to. They're through the Discord, and you just get to hear about what the union is doing and what their priorities are, and ask them questions, suggest things, volunteer, see where you can help. So I think one day I went on a bit of a rant about my experiences at the company at the time, and I can't remember, one of the community organisers was like, hell yeah, that's great, how can we help? Let's do something about this, essentially. So I can't remember the time frame, but sometime after that we had our first members meeting of employees for that workplace. And in the process, I got elected union delegate. So basically, we asked if anybody wanted to do it, and I was like, I guess I'll do it. This is something I feel like I can do. Why not? Everybody voted for me. It was unanimous. Felt pretty good. I was like, okay, great, awesome. And then sort of things slowed down a little bit. So I talked with the union a lot. I was based in Adelaide at the time. I was actually speaking in person to some PA people who were down in Adelaide, and that was a really awesome experience. So we talked a lot about what issues we were currently dealing with, what the company could be doing better, where the real problems were, and just getting a lot of information about what our rights were, what we were entitled to, what we should expect, a lot of information from the union about how much other companies pay similar level employees, what their contracts look like. We had a full review of our contracts because we all had the same contract, and that was really enlightening as well. And so things continued to be slow. I kind of tried to get more delegates involved and sign up more people. We had an event in Adelaide, kind of like this, a little bit smaller, but that was really awesome because I got to meet other Adelaide game developers who were interested in the union and just talk a lot like this about the union. So unfortunately, not too long after that, and at the start of last week, they announced some redundancies at our company, which was very devastating, is still very devastating. A lot of people were impacted, a lot of people I really care about and loved working with were impacted. It also happened to be my last week, so I'd accepted a new role and resigned, and so they made this announcement on the first day of my last week. And I was in that meeting, and the second the word redundancy was said, I was messaging the union. I reached out to Matea specifically, who's the rep from PA, being like, hey, this has just happened. Just feeding him all the information I could because I knew the union could help. They'd just helped Immutable recently with their redundancies, and I knew a little bit about how much they helped there, so I was like, hey, we're going to need support here. That was a long process, a long week. I felt fairly powerful because I was in my last week and also a delegate, so I was like, you know what, I just want to do this. I want to help people, I want to support people. That's my number one priority here. And we did a lot of really good work. Matea joined all of our consultation meetings, he joined one-on-one meetings, we met with management together to discuss a few things, and some positive outcomes were there. Like, we got more time to consult, people were offered one-on-one consultations where before that seemed sort of optional, so a lot more people got more information from the union about what their rights were, what they're entitled to, checking people were getting the right payouts, all this kind of great stuff. Unfortunately, I don't think anybody's job was saved, but it seems like that wasn't an option no matter what we did, unfortunately, which is a longer discussion we're still having with certain members who were affected in particular who really haven't had a great experience. And like I said, my time at the company really wasn't that bad. I had a fantastic boss and mentors who I think really took care of us and looked after my department in particular, but there are definitely people who faced different conditions. And I didn't start hearing about those till I was the delegate, till people could come to me in confidence, knowing I was a support person that had resources, that could share that information kind of privately with the union and share information around with each other. And slowly we all sort of decided to discover, okay, there are some more fundamental problems here than we were realizing, which is very upsetting to learn about, but it's very important to talk to one another. We were a pretty large company, and department to department, project to project, you don't really talk very often, especially when you have a very remote workforce as well. Like, you're not seeing people at lunch to chat about things or going out for a coffee, and you miss those little quick chats and picking up on those little details. In that process, the membership at the company also doubled, essentially, in that week because people realized, and that's both people being made redundant and not being made redundant. So a few people jumped on to immediately get support from the union in that process, but other people were like, I'm nervous for the future, or I'm really impressed with what the union did here, so I'm going to jump in and have access to the same amazing resources. So we also elected 4 new delegates. I think last weekend, a couple of them here. I won't point them out specifically, but 2 of them here, and we've got 2 more who weren't able to make it today. One of them is in Queensland, in fact. But it's sort of like the situation is very tragic and upsetting and brutal. But there were 2 big takeaways I took from it. One is it showed people what the union can do and what support can be offered and what difference they can actually make in the real world. And that's really, really powerful. We actually had these group consultations, and we specifically pushed to have one in the afternoon because our union rep could make that meeting. So the meetings averaged about 70 people per group session. People went to multiple. I went to all of them just to make sure I was there, and we had somebody taking notes for the union, all that great stuff. But the last meeting had over 90 people in it. It didn't start at 90 either. It grew over time. And that's because Matea was there kind of laying things out a little bit, being very clear and strict on a couple of things that the company needed to do at that point in time, and making sure some of our requests were heard. For example, we'd asked the company, hey, when you're rehiring people in the next 6 to 12 months, can you prioritize the people being made redundant? In the earlier meetings, they'd said, yep, sure, we're going to do that, no worries. When Matea asked that same question, asking to have it in writing explicitly, they were a lot more cagey about it, which is very frustrating and upsetting because it's just, when you actually have to put it to them to get it in writing, get it formally agreed and written down, which is a lot more legally binding than a verbal phrase in a meeting, they get more anxious about it. And the company was a good place to work. The people were good, but the business side came in, the corporate side came in a little bit and started making decisions that really devastated and upset people. And that's when you should be getting your union involved. I mean, you should get your union to be in your workplace before anything horrible happens, but if you're in a bigger workplace where it feels like the company has the most power, the best way to give yourselves more power if you're not being heard is the union, because you can come together, you can talk to one another, elect a couple of delegates, figure out what needs work, what needs improving, and start making your workplace a better place, essentially. So, you know, the redundancies were terrible, but we have such this beautiful support network, not just in the company, but outside the company. The amount of places that were like, hey, we have jobs, or messaging friends they knew from the company, be like, let people know that, you know, we have these roles coming soon, and all that kind of stuff. It was great and amazing. And, you know, I think so far at GCAP, if you've been there these past couple of days, the theme is ambition, but they keep talking about sustainability. You know, yes, it's awesome that we have an ambitious industry here, but ambition doesn't mean anything if you burn out. Like, there's no point to it. We need to take care of ourselves. We need to work appropriate hours. We need to be paid appropriately. We need to ensure all of the businesses understand that. And the union has pretty lofty goals to establish enterprise bargaining agreements. I got the acronym right. I've been saying it wrong previously. Which are unique to your workplace. And if you've ever worked at a big workplace, like I worked at Officeworks, we had one that we all agreed to. That's negotiated between the workers with the support of their union and your workplace to ensure that you have all of the things that you want, and you can negotiate that. That includes pay, leave entitlements, all kinds of different stuff. At my company, some of our favorite entitlements are workplace policies that can change at any time, and that's stated in our contracts and in those policies that they are subject to change, which, if you take things at face value and you trust your company, you're not too anxious about it. But they've just gone and broken the trust of pretty much everybody at the company. So I hope they now know that the union are gonna be there long term now. We have our new delegates, we have more members, we have goals about how we want to improve the workplace, and we're going to start doing that. And I might not be there anymore, but I'm supporting our new delegates. And anybody else who wants to unionize their workplace or wants to talk about it, I'm here to talk to everybody, essentially. So that's pretty much everything I wanted to say. Got a bit rambly there, which is always the case. But please come and talk to me if you want to talk about unionization, the experience that I had, QA things also on the side, because I love QA, but mostly the union movement. Like one thing I said a lot was that we have a lot of great bodies in Australia that advocate for the industry, but they're very much focused on the business. We didn't have an organization for workers specifically, which is pretty much why the GWA is here. Like, it's not just about pay and contracts and redundancies and all this big stuff. It's also about just improving the industry and advocating for ourselves. I plan to be a full-time person, but there's contractors and freelancers like Maze who, you know, have different benefits the union can bring to them, and the unions focus on that too. So it's sort of a big holistic community that you can come join and support one another and make things better. So yeah, join a union, basically. That's it.
Thanks, Sarah, for sharing your story. I have been victim of layoffs personally in the past, and I wish I had people like Sarah at my workplace helping me out through those kind of tough times. So thanks again, Sarah, for sharing that wonderful story. And also thank you for Matteo for his hard work as well as in part for Sarah's story. Okay, so next up we have the panel. So I'm going to call up these next few people, some of whom have already spoken today. Can I ask for Tim, Maze, Adrian, and Sarah. Please make them welcome. Yeah.
Microphone.
Okay. Now, before I open the floor, these I'll be asking the questions. Yeah. My town. Now, before I start with the questions, just wanted to open up to the panel just to introduce yourselves. Start with Tim.
Sure. Oh, thank you, Adrian. Very nice. Hi. I'm Tim. I am one of the currently elected co-conveners of Game Workers Australia, along with Mace. My background is in video game development, and then when my company exploded, I went into video game journalism. And then when my company exploded, I went into being a trade union officer for now 3 different trade unions in Australia, which is where I do full-time work. And on the side, I am building a new union for game developers and game workers of all kinds.
Sorry, before that, what are your pronouns?
My pronouns are he, him. Thank you for asking.
Nice.
Hi, my name's Adrian. My pronouns are he, him. I am a school teacher. And then I worked in rail security, but when I was a school teacher and when I was in rail security, I was a union delegate. And at some point I decided that's what I want to do for a living. So I now work for Professionals Australia. I'm the executive officer of the Managers and Professionals division, which includes Game Workers Australia. It also includes ambulance officers in Victoria, ABC executives, and the more boring cousins of normal IT workers. So translators and interpreters, amongst others. So it's a very diverse group, and sometimes disparagingly known as the everyone else group. So, but that's me.
Hi everyone, I'm Maze. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm elected co-convener of Game Workers Australia with Tim. And have been part of the Game Workers Australia with Tim since 2018. I have worked in games pretty much exclusively, other than doing hospo and data entry in high school and uni. I was totally new to the union movement, and I think, like a lot of other games workers, had no idea what unions were going to do. And the first interaction I ever had with Tim was asking him what's in it for freelancers, and which is now kind of my main passion with working with GWAs, freelancers and small business and co-op. My day job is in audio. That's where I work. I usually work 2 or 3 contracts at a time. I'm currently with Ghost Pattern, who we just released Wayward Strand. And then the rest of the time I work for Wolffire, which makes entirely different games, and doing other little bits and pieces.
So you all know who I am, but we also have a stream going. So in case anybody on the stream wasn't here, I'm Sarah. They, them pronouns, workplace delegate, union good. That's about it.
Hi. Yeah, but and also for those people who weren't here earlier, my name is Mitch, pronouns he, him. I am a elected community officer for GWA, as well as a producer within the games industry. Currently between jobs, not because I'm unemployed, but because I'm literally starting a new job next week. And I've been involved with GWA since I think like late 2018, while I was still trying to get into the industry. Struggling. Took me 10 years to get my foot in the door, working in Sydney and graduating during the GFC. Does a lot of wonders for your job prospects. So, but I will be chairing the panel for tonight. All right. I'm just going to start things off with first question. Why do game workers in Australia need a union? Who's keen to start diving into that?
I don't think we have anyone here who's qualified to answer that.
No.
I mean, look, I'll kick it off.
The microphone?
Do we need the microphone?
Yeah.
Am I doing okay? Sweet.
Yeah.
For the live stream. Yes. I mean, look, I think the number one reason that we need a union is simply because we have all been floundering on our own for such a long time with no support. And I certainly can speak personally and say that when I was working at Interzone, which was many years ago, the old hands in the audience nodding along, and that company collapsed. We didn't know what to do. We didn't know who to turn to. We knew that we had rights in a theoretical sense, but we didn't have any muscle to enforce them. And there have been so many stories like that throughout our industry. And for me, going through that and knowing how hard it was on me and all my colleagues, and how devastating it was financially for many of us, and emotionally, it's just not the sort of thing that we can allow to continue at all. And when that is just a pattern that repeats and repeats, there's something that has to be done about it, and the only way to do something about that is to unionize, because the laws are all there, but they don't do anything, and the workers need to do it themselves, as has been the case throughout history forever. So that's my answer.
I think for me, working pretty much exclusively in indie with one small awful stint in AAA that will never happen again, it's kind of around, we have this community where most of the time we are saying we care a lot for one another and we want to, share the profits or have flat hierarchies and things like that. But the reality is that, you start a studio with your mates straight out of uni. You have no idea what you care about other than something that you might have heard from Valve a million years ago that isn't true anymore. Or maybe that's not a thing for uni students now. But you go to your lawyer or your accountant and they're like, here's the template. And then you don't realize what you care about until you're accidentally screwing over your friends. And I think that's been my main experience as a freelancer and as someone who works with, small communities. There's just a lot of accidental screwing each other over, not knowing what we actually care about and having to do too much study, I think. I think not everyone needs to be a lawyer or an accountant, and I think that we're all kind of entering this industry that makes it feel like we do need that expertise constantly. And I would like to outsource that to the union. Yeah.
I'm going to take a slightly different approach here and sort of say, why not? It's quite optimistic, really, because I've tried to talk to a lot of games workers about the union, and some of them are very whatever about it. I'm like, but why would you not join? Why not be a member? Why not get involved? There's no loss. Yes, it costs money, but it's completely tax deductible. You can get it all back, and there are some amazing benefits. There essentially, as far as I'm concerned, is no downside to it. And if you ever get discriminated in your workplace because you're a union member, that's illegal. Your workplace can't ask you if you're a member, and you don't have to tell them. And just do it.
Yeah.
And I guess all I'd add is that every employer has a union. Every employer has an association. So the employers, the bosses, know the value in collectivism.
Yeah.
All right? The Australian Hotels Association, AIG, the Business Council, Engineers Australia. These are all employer unions. So if the bosses are doing it, they know there's value in it, why don't the workers do it? The only other thing I'd add is no matter where you work, you're covered by some sort of instrument, contract, a modern award, an enterprise agreement, a state industrial award if you're working in the public sector. Those documents are not necessarily easy to interpret, and your union has the experts that can help you to do that. So there's two other points.
Cool. No, thanks for that insight. I think another thing to consider is the challenges that our industry faces, especially in regards to game workers in Australia. Now, what are some of those main challenges that the workers are facing at the moment? I don't know if you would like to speak of that.
Yep. Hit it on the table. Look, I think the number one issue that's on a lot of people's minds at the moment is job security and stability.
Yep.
I think the one of the strongest ways that we can address that is by making sure that unions are at the centre of those discussions, and that, you know, when we talk about where the funding for the industry comes from, that we make sure the funding for that goes to the workers and not just immediately lining the bank accounts of all the people who are in the studios. The number one way to have people stay in the industry for a long time is to make sure that they can pay rent and that they can buy groceries and that they can pay their power bills. And that's only going to happen if we start putting in place, you know, serious structural changes to make sure that that money flows on to the people who do the work. And the only way that's going to happen is if the workers are actually demanding it. And that's the same whether you're an employee or a freelancer. It's the sort of thing that requires collective work together. And the only body that's going to do that is a union. It's not going to be done by anyone else. We're the only people who have the motivation and the power to do so. So we need to basically start doing it. And if we all work together, we can absolutely solve that job security and stability problem. It's not something that's insurmountable. We don't have to constantly be at the whim of funding rounds and of layoffs. It is the sort of thing that we can work together to make growth sustainable, to make, to make layoffs few and far between, and redundancies, something that we hardly ever see, rather than something that we're constantly worried about. And yeah, it's our responsibility to really do that, because no one else is going to do it for us. Yeah, but that's my major concern.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many issues. Inflation is a huge one, and Tim already mentioned it. But and the inequity of the way our society is structured in terms of the way profits go. So when you've got high inflation and low wages, that means the rich are getting richer, and everyone else is getting poorer. So that's a huge issue, and that's only going to change with the agitation of unions.
Yeah.
I think you covered it. Yeah. Inequality, I would like to live off of royalties off games in the future.
Yeah.
So therefore, what I deserve.
I think from my point of view, like as a junior in the industry, it's like information and understanding. I was fortunate that I could go to networking events, meet people, build up a network. I happened to find some amazing mentors at my first role, but there were people at my company that was like, this was their first job ever, which is amazing that we have an industry where it can be your first job now. But we have these bigger companies opening up, and we have all these juniors and these young people starting who just simply don't have any workplace experience. They don't know what their rights are. I mean, even at Officeworks, I had people not understanding that if you're a permanent employee, you can take a public holiday off. The double pay is awesome, but you get paid if you don't take that day off. You're not missing out on anything. It's stuff like that. It's just education, understanding. They don't teach you this in schools. No. They should. And the law is really hard to interpret, and the information is really hard to interpret. So as juniors, there's no gatekeeping. There's student rates that you can join up with, and it's just an awesome place to get a lot of really valuable information that will theoretically change your life. Even just asking, hey, I applied for this company, what's it like working there? Yeah. The union can tell you more information than somebody who is working there can, because they're not beholden to the same rules that somebody under an NDA is.
Yeah, that's a good point about the NDAs, because the industry is quite secretive, even for entertainment standards, compared to film. Some of the stuff we stress over about, Hollywood just laugh at. That's fine. I don't care if people could take photos of the movie sets. But that's interesting you bring that up. And I guess we kind of did cover a little bit of this next question with your response, Tim. But I don't know, maybe if we could dive into a little bit more. But in terms of how can the union address some of these challenges that we've brought up so far?
Yeah, I mean, thank you. I think a lot of the stuff around NDAs in particular is something that, we can definitely immediately address. I think a lot of people aren't aware that you have the right to seek advice on a contract before you sign it. And that is your right. And also the confidentiality clauses in the contract don't count because you haven't signed them, right? So the first thing you should do before you do get a contract with a scary NDA on it is send it through to your union for review. And you will get some advice. And although I think we discussed this at the conference earlier, but although you may, for example, once you've signed that contract, not be able to discuss your pay with your colleagues, you can discuss your pay with your union, who will discuss it with your colleagues. And then that information is pulled together, and through that you'll be able to learn things that you technically didn't ask and are now allowed to know. So there's a lot of ways around what may seem very restrictive things that you can do if you are pooling your resources and pooling your knowledge together. I think when I think about how a union can solve problems, I think about how, like let's say if we wanted to have dentistry added to Medicare, right? Just say we wanted that, and if every single person in Australia walked off the job tomorrow until that happened, we would get it by the end of the week, right? So everything is possible if you can get the numbers to do it. Literally everything is possible. So when I think about, can we solve this problem? The answer is always yes. It's really just a matter of a numbers game, and it means it's not glamorous or necessarily exciting, and it's not heroic like in a Hollywood film. It's conversations, reaching out to people, knowledge sharing, and just being willing to pitch in. But it can literally solve almost any problem that you have as long as you're willing to volunteer and do your part and share your information and knowledge with other people, and you'll get it done. Yeah.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Tim. That was a great answer. So look, I do want to just say a couple of things. So firstly, I think everyone sort of realises, but sometimes you have to be told, that people don't do things, and employers don't necessarily do things because it's the right thing to do or because you had the best argument. All right. If things got fixed just because you had the best argument, we would have stopped burning coal years ago, right? So we all know that, right? It's about vested interests and power. So that's. I just want to say that and just park it. But the way you build power as workers is through your union. But look, I guess from Professionals Australia's perspective and Game Workers Australia, there's three things. There's the big global stuff we do through the ACTU. For example, we just got 10 days domestic violence leave, family and domestic violence leave nationally, and in New South Wales we've got 20, right? That's something we really should celebrate. In New South Wales, only public sector workers, by the way, but it's the thin end of the wedge. So we've already got it on the table on half a dozen EBAs around New South Wales and nationally. But it's the thin end of the wedge, so we're getting there. It's also got a fantastic supportive clause that was developed with industry experts. Okay, so it's not just 20 days, but it's actually all the supportive clauses that tell employers what they need to be doing and what sort of supports they need to be providing. So it's a world-class clause there. That happened because rail workers fought for it. Sydney Trains employees fought for it. And so they rammed it through for all New South Wales public sector employees. And it happened nationally because of the We Won't Wait campaign of the unions, predominantly. So the union movement pushes through those big ticket issues. Then you've got your industry stuff. This is where people like Tim, myself, Maze, Jill McCabe, our CEO, can really push forward on trying to negotiate industry-wide things. And this is why it's really important that we have industry groups like our game workers. We also have IT groups. We have engineer groups. We have pharmacists. We have these different industry groupings within Professionals Australia that push for the things that are important. You can only do that, though, with the collective power of the members. There's no point me, when I put my pharmacy hat going on and meeting with, one of the big pharmacy companies, unless I've got a good proportion of that company's staff that are members. Okay, so that's the second one, the industry. And then, of course, you've got your employer, all right? And there's an interesting little story there. Across the whole of IT, so it's not just game workers, across the whole of IT, there's a real issue around pay opacity, right? Nobody quite knows what anyone else is getting paid. And when that's the case, there is a suspicion, whether it's real or not, that you're getting underpaid relative to your peers, that there might be discriminatory practices in terms of, gender, etc. That there might be some pay inequalities, and nobody really knows. And so I don't think that's an organising issue, to be honest, right? I don't think anyone's losing sleep over it, but everyone just feels a bit not great about it, and we should fix that. So there was one IT company that does graphic design. I won't mention which one it is, but there's only one. So where we had two members, they told us about this issue. It resonated with everyone there. As I said, I don't think it's an organising issue, but it's a great issue for raising awareness of the union. So we managed to recruit about 20 members, 30 members, won't say the exact number, but a bunch of members, and we got 300 or 400 people involved. We did the survey, and we were able to actually report back to those people what they're getting paid, right? Just because two people had an idea. So it solved that problem in their company. So there's the enterprise level, and of course the peak of that is negotiating an enterprise agreement. And once you've done that, that locks in your conditions. So it stops the company, the same company actually, on the last day of our survey saying, oh, we used to give you this lunch allowance. It wasn't called a lunch allowance, but that's what it was. And they cancelled it on the last day of the survey unilaterally. It was a COVID thing. They were always going to do it. But it just highlighted to people the fact that these conditions that are policy are totally at the company's discretion. They can take it away at any time. And then, of course, there's that last level, which is what happens when Tim is getting bullied at work?
Yeah, what happens?
What happens? Who does he go to, right? What happens to the person I spoke to when I was working for a different union? I was 7 o'clock at night. I was just about to go home, but I got a message that this person had been throwing up in the car park in the morning because they were being sexually harassed by their boss. It was like, yeah, I could ring them tomorrow, but I didn't. How does that person get help? It's through their union. Their union will fight for them and will call that behaviour out and will change it. If you're getting performance managed at work, if you're unilaterally marched out the door, these are all things that we need to change, and the way we change it is by union members, firstly, people being a member of the union and then putting their hand up and saying, no, that's not right, and I'm calling in my union. So that's how we're going to change. So there's 4 levels there. So nationally, industry-wide, enterprise-wide, and then looking after individual members.
I'm conscious of time, so feel free to
much. You just think of it as like, to resolve conflicts, improve conditions. And this is kind of a good segue into my next question.
Before you segue, there was something I wanted to quickly add. You might I think one of the things I wanted to quickly add is that, we're talking about how the union is going to fix things, and all that is 100% true, and it's happening. But the thing that I didn't know, and I think I suspect a lot of people here don't know, is that each and every year, employer groups go before the Fair Work Commission and try to make your life worse, right? And I didn't know this until like 5 or 6 years ago when I started actually being a union officer. But every single year, employer groups go to the Fair Work Commission and say, wages should go down. Conditions should get worse. They do that. They actually write that down in paper and they put it in front of the Fair Work Commission and say, we, the sensible business managers of the world, want to pay you less. And the Fair Work Commission listens to that a lot of the time. So they're doing that every year. And if no one else is saying anything else in response, who are they going to listen to? So it's not just a case of what is the union doing. You need to also consider that these people are out there acting against your interests every day. And only by collectively working together are we going to actually be involved in that discussion.
No.
Yeah.
That's a great point, Tim. Now I'm going to segue.
Yeah,
All right. So outside of these sometimes can be seen insurmountable challenges that our industry faces. What are some of the other benefits that game workers can achieve by joining PA? Yes, go.
Great. Well, look, first, as Sarah said, all the fees are tax deductible. So, even I think there are a lot of additional ancillary benefits. But the number one thing that I always say to everyone, I've said it already today, and I'll say to anyone who listens to me talk for more than 30 seconds, is that you don't join the union and just expect it to. It's not like a car insurance, or it's not like a gym membership. You join it, yes, and you put the money in, but you also have to be a part of it. If you just join it and you just wait, that's great. Like, your money is helping other people. That's genuinely really good. If you're not using the union right now, that's awesome, because you're helping to pay for the services of a lawyer. You're helping to pay for the cost of a court case. You're helping to pay for something else that is helping someone else. So even if you're not using it, that's great. You're still part of it. You're helping someone else. But it only gets stronger if you actually put the work in yourself. You volunteer. You come to the events. If you get an email that says we need people to show up and man this, then you show up and man that. Or you get an email that says we need somebody to share their experience at the next meeting about this thing, and you say I'd love to do that. That's what makes the union really, really strong. So there are a lot of benefits, but I think what I always say to members is don't rely on the benefits, because the real benefit is that you can approach someone else in the workplace and say, I'm really nervous and scared, will you help me? And they say, yes, I will. That's the real benefit.
This community is a really good thing you get by being a part of your union. So you got access to not only the game workers Discord, but the more broad PA Discord. You get training. All right, there's plenty of training available, both through the stuff that Tim and Maze are doing, and also more generally through PA. We also send people to ACTU training, so that's sort of leadership training, training on how to be a support person, training on how to do it. So we walk with you along the way and help you. So you develop your character, but also you sleep well at night because it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. I got people in some of my IT workplaces and transport workplaces that are on really, really good money. 6 figures, often not starting in a one, but they're members of the union because it's the right thing to do, not because they want an insurance policy like Tim sort of alluded to, but mostly it's just because it's a values thing. Most of the people at that place I mentioned earlier joined not because they really wanted to know if they were getting paid properly, but because it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, I'm a part of 3 unions. No. Yes. This obviously is my main union. It's my career. And then I'm also a member of the musicians union because it's super cheap, but it's also just a great solidarity move. And I'm also a member of the rental and housing union because fuck landlords. Yeah. And these are all fully tax deductible. I think, and we try not to frame the union as a pay for service thing, and that's really true. You get out what you put in, but as a freelancer, the professional indemnity insurance is way cheaper when you go through the union because they get these huge big bulk rates. As contractors, our scary NDAs go directly to us. Or whatever other random thing, like, you didn't work until 5 a.m. on some day that they asked you to, which apparently they've decided has cost this much money that you're now liable for, or something else. If you're in a position as a freelancer where you haven't started a company and you don't have that kind of legal barrier between you and your work, that professional indemnity insurance is what you need. And then, now that the world is opening up for travel, travel insurance. And as a tech worker, my travel insurance is just quite expensive because of all my gear. but I've more than paid for my union already with the travel insurance. So I know that we try not to do the service things. I'm just going to be the one outlier, but I have saved a lot of money. Yeah.
Dory, I'm also going to contribute to the service things. I got 2 points. The first is that there's a portal where you get members discounts on a bunch of like random stuff, like electronics, white goods, home goods, like a whole bunch of stuff is like different discounts. They're not like the most amazing thing ever, but it can save you a little bit of money. And there's like, the portal could be better, I will say, but like from a UX perspective, it needs some improvement. Yeah, exactly. But like, you might need something, and there's some really good options on there. But besides that, for me personally, it gave me the opportunity to actually help people. I care a large amount about the people in my life, my colleagues. I care a lot about rights, people's well-being, all that kind of great stuff. And I felt helpless for a little while because, I was only one person. I was a junior. I tried to do what I could to advocate for the things that I cared about, but it didn't really get me that far until I joined the union, until, just saying I'm the union delegate made people a little bit scared. Which is a good thing and a bad thing. But if I hadn't have been in that position, then I wouldn't have been able to help as much as I could, because as a delegate, I have extra responsibilities and extra protections. So I felt like I could push for things a little bit harder than I would have otherwise, because, they know who I am. They know they can't really come after me for doing these things because I am protected and I have that support place. And if we're all union members and we're a unionized workforce, we'll all have those protections. But that's pretty much it. Yeah, helping people is what I got from the union.
Cool. Thanks for that. I'm going to shift gears a little bit and start to look at the future. How do you think that the environment for game workers is going to look in 5 years, outside of maybe potential climate collapse?
Me first? Okay, that's it. I've only been in the industry for like 2, maybe 3 and 2.5. I can't count anymore. It's been a couple years. I don't know, like, it's very interesting. Like, genuinely during this like GCAP, I've been talking to a lot of different people and hearing a lot of different people talk about the future, right? And from my like very newbie experience, I have no idea what's going to happen, but my hope is that things get a lot better for the workers, essentially. I mean, like, you're seeing it a lot in America. Like, a lot of the QA teams are unionizing. A lot of companies are actually starting to face like legal litigation and fines and different things. It could be a lot more money that they could be fined for the horrible things that they do. But, I really hope that we work on sustainability, essentially, like making sure people can get into the industry, be paid an appropriate amount, and stay in the industry and not leave. Like, I want to be in games for a very long time. I want to do QA in games for a very long time. I'd like it if the industry let me do that and let me be happy and healthy and maybe buy a house one day. But hey, there are some other things that will help me buy a house one day that the government could do. But anyway.
I'm hoping to buy a house in the next 12 months, 24 months, looking at my partner over there. We'll figure it out. But it's definitely, the union has helped me up my income considerably. I don't know, other than climate collapse, shit, I don't know.
Sorry to make it grim.
Yeah. I reckon, there's a lot of indies who are starting to get better business chops, and I reckon that unions are part of that. I reckon that, we can kind of decentralize some of the business happening, but then at the same time, there's places just buying up all of the businesses. So I don't know, but I do hope that imagining me still in games doesn't feel so foreign. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
I just want to see 2 things. Always, small goals, not so difficult. So the first one is I'd like to see 100 to 200 member organisers. So people who are properly trained, that work in the industry, they've been trained like a delegate or an organiser and have the skills to spread the word as they move around the industry. That's the first thing I'd like to see. The second thing I'd like to see is a situation where nobody is willing to work for under the pay that they should get. Nobody should have to work for less than award wage. Nobody should have to work even for award wage, really, because your award's not the best one. To be honest, the rates aren't great.
Well, it's the minimum. It's not the market rate.
It's not the market rate. That's right. But in your industry, that's exactly what happens. There's plenty of fly-by-night operators. Not always intentionally, as has been said. It's sometimes that you don't realise what you believe in until your accountant's spoken to you, as to steal a mazeism. But that's the two things I'd like to see for the future.
Sweet. I want to see two things. Actually, I want to see three things. I can count very high. The first thing I want to see is I want to see Australia's first video game enterprise bargaining agreement. I want to see several of them by 2025. And I want to see, the second thing I want to see is a bunch of industrial action to get there. And I want to watch and cheer along and feel my heart absolutely sing as I see Australian game workers walking out the door and refusing to participate in unethical business practices and refusing to compromise on what they're worth. So that's what I want to see. And I think that would be an absolutely amazing moment. And I can't wait for it to happen. The third and final thing I want to see is that I don't want to be in this chair in 5 years' time or 3 years' time. And that's not because I don't love what I'm doing, but because it's really important for everyone here to understand that the union movement is not made up of celebrities or talking heads or leadership figures. The union is a democratic organisation that elects people who speak up, and then they take their turn at the service and they move on again, and then somebody else gets elected. So more than happy to be here, but what we need to see is the union movement finding and electing its own leaders in the workforce, that people, maybe even somebody in this very room, feels empowered enough to stand up and say, I am going to run for office. I'm going to be a skilled and empowered delegate who is more than happy standing up in front of a bunch of people and talking about union stuff. So by 2025, I don't want to be here. I want to be sitting in the audience watching some killer union delegates leading the discussion about what the union looks like for them. And I want to be nodding along vigorously as I see some amazing stuff happening. So that's what I want to see.
Thanks for that, Tim. Probably will catch up on a bit of sleep then.
Nice.
All right, well, I've run out of questions. So, and I think
20 minutes.
I know, right? It's hectic. I think we've just got enough time just for any closing thoughts from.
Let's do some Q&A.
Okay, we
There's
could.
only so many times we can yell about how good unions are. Let's do some Q&A.
Yeah, we've got 5 minutes.
Take your microphone.
Yeah, we've got 5 minutes.
Q&A time.
Yeah.
So I'm a strange visitor here. I had the pleasure to meet Megan's. They came out to Chicago. Strange confused, but hi, Ted Denola. There's multiple reasons I can't join this union. One is I moved states, obviously. But I'll tell you my story really fast. I've been working in for about 14 years, 15 including internship. My first internship, I was zero pay in Vancouver. They flew me out. I made tea every morning at 6 a.m. I watched the producer chase someone down and yell at him. It was so old. I thought it was normal and I loved it. And then I went back to school and then I got my first job after 7 months of not doing anything because they bring me up, have me do some work as a test, and then leave and go home. Got my first job. They made me a development director, which was a weird thing for a first time having a job which is indie work. I was in charge of a team of 5, 2 of whom were not getting paid anything. I didn't know at the time. And then a team in Egypt that they were paying under the table. I found out as I worked there, I'll cut that story short, but you look up Video Game Studios from Hell Kotaku, it's still the first dude that comes up, which is great. And I left because I found out they had been withholding tax from my check. And then the tax came in, and they had never given it away. Got out of that, and I thought it was normal, and I loved it. I got handed by Zeta. I went out there. They said, oh, here's your new salary, 3 times what you're getting. I could barely survive in San Francisco. Fucking nonsense. Couldn't talk about my salary to anyone around me because you didn't do that there. And then I worked my ass off for them, and once the company got laid off, no communication. And I thought it was normal, and I had a good time. And then I went indie for a few years. I was one of the studio leads. And I signed, I did contract, did everything properly, I was a lawyer. I own 70% of the IP of the game. I've seen $9,000 in that game. It's grossed over $3.2 million. But the owner of the company embezzled all that, declared bankruptcy. It was another controversial figure. Still a personal friend that would never fucking work with again because he fucked up.
It's a
And I thought it was normal and I loved it. And then I looked at Phenomena, which you can read about that, which was a story, a studio that really did carry on its sleeve a lot of great people, but was a toxic situation. And then for the last 5 years, I've worked at a large tech company. I worked at Meta. And you're like, Meta's not very meaningful, but internally we do have the ICB, the internal, the individual contributor board. And so we've eliminated things like arbitration is completely mandatory. We've had 0 layoffs in a time where tech companies are laying off left and right because with the way that our layoff policy is so expensive to them, that it's cheaper to keep us around until things get better. I get clear expectations. I get a rolling increasing PTO that if I don't use, my manager says, go take PTO, please. I get every 5 years, we get 30 days off. Every PTO, parental leave, regardless of gender and how the child is brought into your family, is a minimum of 3 months. And it's not, there's no limitation to it. They give us all sorts of benefits. It's like living in Europe and in the States. And about 3 months in, after I learned all this, I was like, holy shit, I was really messed up in the head. By the time I worked there, we didn't have unions in the state really. Since then, there's a few that started up. They was doing really interesting stuff. Game Workers United has gotten involved. Sarah Amaro, who's a good friend of mine, has done really good work with STAG and how they work with games. But I wanted to come out here and say, I've been following the work you guys have been doing, and I know how strong unions are as part of this culture. And it's so beautiful to see because we need this. It is one of the more, every employer-employee relationship can get abused. That's the capitalism. Companies are immoral. They store shareholders. But games and entertainment as a whole, they steal our passion, they steal our fire. They need to convince us that we're not worth a voice.
Preachy facing this way.
Oh.
Preachy too.
Yeah. So thank you so much. And me, I'd like to know how I can help remotely, whether that's funding or giving consulting to students or whoever, because this is a global fight. It's everyone together. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions from the crowd? Or are you trying to wrap it up?
No,
Too bad.
maybe one more question. Nice.
So a lot of what's being mentioned is people messing up on accident when they start businesses. They decide, form friends with unis, uni friends and whatever. What can we do to make sure that doesn't happen, as in from a business starter's perspective?
I think, Maze, this one's for you, best.
So if you can't attend one of our business workshops before you start signing all your contracts, because you need to start your contracts super soon, then email us and ring me, and I will start discussing with you what it is you care about and really start laying those things out. It really helps to have an outside person come in and start asking you really hard questions, so that you don't have to kind of carry that emotionally with you and your mates, right? You can be like, Maze, what a bother, or other words. And, that can just take a huge amount of emotional labor off of what is, it is a really passion industry. So if you're about to graduate, or you have graduated and you're like, all right, I'm about to go to my lawyer, state funding requires you to have an LLC, and you're like, I want to know what I care about before I go to my lawyer. They give me a template and then I have to get them to rewrite the entire thing and pay them twice. Let's just pay them once and figure out what we care about straight away. And I'm, real happy to get in there with you and figure that out. It's going to be really hard, and then you can cry afterwards, but it'll be happy tears.
Sweet. Thanks for that, Mace.
Great answer.
Yeah, great answer.
Make them cry.
Cool. I think that's going to do it. But before we do, is there any final comments or kind of statements from the panel before we wrap up this segment of the talk?
There's only so many times I can say join your union.
I don't worry, that's the next part. We'll just segue to the next part.
You know, I'm stealing your material. I would really like to ask everyone to join tonight if you're not already a member. We are growing very quickly. The turnout here has been amazing.
Yeah.
I would love to see, all of you join either as a student, if you are a student, or as a member. All the membership forms are out there on the table, and we certainly will be coming around and putting them into your hand and meaningfully looking at you. And we very much would like you to hold up your end of the bargain and join. As I said, it is, even if you don't immediately need the services of the union, your money is helping somebody else just like you in another building somewhere else in Australia, stopping them from getting fired, stopping them from getting abused. And when the time comes, you will be the one to need that help, and you will get it because you've been contributing so much to the union since that time. So, yeah, the final remarks are to join the union.
And you'll sleep well at night, as I said before. And look, it's cheap as chips, really. Even the full-fledged membership is not expensive. So have a good look into it, and it's a great community to be a part of.
Yeah, I think that's it. But also, if there isn't anyone else after us, Georgia's going to come and talk about the game again.
There is actually.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, cool. That's it.
Sarah, do you have any further final thoughts?
The person after us.
Join the union. If you have more questions, we'll be around tonight. And also, the Discord community part is free to join to start with, so you can ask all of your questions in there and get to know us, join the community, and then we'll make you join. With that, you should definitely actually fully join as well.
Cool. Good round of applause to the panel. Next person to talk is actually on the panel. I'd like to bring Adrian to the lectern to discuss the actual membership options. So, thank you, Adrian.
Yeah, stay there by all means. So that be easily found at the end, I guess. Look, we do just want to actually talk about why you should join a union. We've done that, but we also want to just talk about, how you join your union. So we have a number of tiers, and you've all got a brochure on your seats. Can I just ask you to pull that out and have a look at it, please? So you can see there's a blurb once you open up on the left side about why you should join the union. I'm not going to go through that again. We've just been talking about it for the last little while. But what I do want to talk about is the membership options. And I'm not sure if there's a slide, but if there isn't, that's fine too. So, are you employed in the industry or an independent contractor in the industry? Anyone want to put their hand up if they're employed in the industry or an independent contractor in the industry? Okay, so for you, the best level of membership is actually Tier 3. All right? That's the full service. That's the level of membership that gives you access to things like collective bargaining or an independent contractor review. So, however, if for whatever reason, you work for a really small studio or something, and you don't think that's appropriate for you, then there's Tier 2. Tier 2 is for basically somewhere where you're not going to want legal representation, or you're not going to want to negotiate an enterprise bargaining agreement, right? Because that's for Tier 3. What you do get on Tier 2 is some time on the phone with an industrial officer or a senior organiser or an executive officer to work through workplace issues, up to 40 minutes. You get the member savings program that was mentioned a few times, and you can get an employment contract review. All right. You get access, every level of membership, all three, get access to workshops, presentations and courses. At the moment we're running member organising training for all members. You get general employment support and advice from trade union officials like Matea or Mays. And by being a member at any of the tiers, you campaign for a stronger and equitable games industry. So tier 1, that's for things like your solidarity memberships. That's for things, people that, you know, maybe part-time in the industry, those sorts of things. Tier 2, again, maybe if you're in a small studio where you don't think you're going to need an enterprise bargaining agreement. And tier 3 is for your independent contractors and for people who are basically, anyone who's basically employed and getting paid properly as an employee should be in tier 3.
You talk about the student rate.
Yeah. Just to, I ought to mention, because I know we do have a couple of times students here today and possibly some students from other places. We do have a special student membership rate that's across the whole of Professionals Australia. So it's not just related to game workers, it's $4 a month. Okay, so if you can't afford the $4 a month, I think there's something wrong. And you still get access to the member savings program for your $4 a month. So even if you just got your groceries using a Woolworths gift card that you bought off the member savings platform, you can save $4 a month. So it's pretty much free. So we do encourage you to have a look at that and to join tonight. We will give you a form. If you want a paper form, you can use the online form. You can scan the QR code on the back of your game. Make sure you scan the one on the left, not the one on the right, okay? And join your union. So I really strongly encourage you to do that. As I said, you'll sleep well at night. And if you haven't joined, well, you bloody well should. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Adrian. Good mention of the game, because that's a good another good segue. I love that word. I'd like to bring Georgia to the stand. She'll. You have been found guilty of. Fun,
am I right? Anyway, what's that? Yeah, like that, I suppose. Yes, that's me. Hi, I'm Georgia. Most of you already have one of these. This is just a really quick mention to say that if you came in during the talk and you don't have a thing that looks like this, come and see me. We're playing a social game tonight. This game card will put you on one of 4 teams. Everything else is in the game card. The only thing I'll say here is that all 4 teams win together or no team wins. Those are the only possible outcomes. Other than that, do come and see me. And just like the union works best the more people that are in it, this game only works if every person in the room has one of these. So definitely come see me if you don't already have one. And if you're thinking that you might need to leave shortly after these talks, I hear that the bell is going to tell relatively soon, so don't rush off right at once. You'll have a chance to play at least one time. But yeah, anyone who doesn't have one, come see me on your way out. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Georgia. Well, that pretty much concludes the talk section of tonight. Just FYI, we will have to get out of the building by 10 o'clock. So I'll do my best dad impersonation around about 9:30 just to remind everybody that we've got to leave soon. So just keep that in mind. But yes, outside of the game that George is running, we also have got a lovely booth of indie games kindly provided by Hover Garden. Please have a look at those games and have a play. Hopefully there's more food coming and drinks, I believe. There is, yeah. And yeah, have a great time. And thanks again for coming. Appreciate it. Lovely turnout. And yeah, sign up and join the union. Thanks, everyone.
Go and eat. Free.